need to put an intro. But today it is Talk About. Now, what Talk About is basically anything that's wrestling related, like the news on wrestlers, former wrestlers, or current wrestlers, and trying to see if we can talk about it. So, firstly, I want to talk about something that recently broke on the news. And I'm actually going to make this mention because I actually have the link here. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to basically, we're going to get where we're getting the story from. We're going to talk about this story and see what my 2 cents is on that. So this is from WrestlingIncorporated.com. This is a wrestling-themed website talking about wrestling news, like in, from past wrestlers or present wrestlers on what's going on in their lives. But anyways, here's the title of the article. Federal authorities trying to seize $1.5 million home of former WWE superstar Ted DiBiase Jr. Now, for those who are not familiar with Ted DiBiase Jr., he is about the second generation wrestler, and he is the son of $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase, who is a WWE Hall of Famer. Ted DiBiase has been, well, I wouldn't say successful in his time in WWE, but he had a great run as a legacy with Cody Rhodes and Randy Orton, and even winning the World Tag Team titles with said Cody Rhodes. Now here's what I'm going to read from the Wrestling Incorporated news, and this is what this was according from the Associated Press. And there were court files apparently from June. The attempt of seizing the home of Ted DiBiase Jr. in Madison, Mississippi comes after Ted's brother, former WWE talent Brett DiBiase, who is the younger brother of Ted, but I'm not sure, was indicted in one of the largest public corruption cases in Mississippi history earlier this year. So I guess this was back in 2019, or a report earlier in the year of this year, how 2019 state audit showed that the DiBiase family, which included the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase, received millions of dollars from the Mississippi Welfare Agency via non-profit organizations, business deals, and travel reimbursements over the past few years. So let's think about this for a second. In earlier this year, so this is in 2020, so a few years, let's take a little bit of the timelines. You get it from maybe 3 years to maybe about 5. So about 3 to 5 years, the DiBiase family, including the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase himself, had been receiving millions from this agency. These payments were made as the Mississippi Department of Human Services was denying more than 98% of its individual welfare applicants. So, in favor, they wouldn't take anyone else's welfare applications in favor of $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase and his family. And that's kind of sad when you think about it. It's kind of sad about it too, because Ted DiBiase, I believe he's still a preacher. Because Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million Man, had actually did a little ceremony or preached over at the God, what was the church? But it was in Tampa. But my old coworker Gramps, you heard him on his channel, actually was there. So that was interesting. But anyways, Brett DiBiase, after leaving WWE, he actually worked for this Department of Human Services, and he was later indicted of charges of stealing $48,000 in welfare money. He, of course, pled not guilty to these charges. Authorities say Brett was paid to teach drug abuse classes in Mississippi, even though he had in a luxury drug rehab program in Malibu, California at the same time. As noted earlier this year, an investigation by the Carleon Ledger newspaper found that Mississippi's Department of Human Services paid Ted Sr.'s Christian wrestling ministry more than $2 million in welfare funds. Wow. Ted Jr. and his wife were actually less than 1 week away from finalizing the sale on the French colonial lakeside house of this, the $1.5 million house, when federal agents delivered paperwork to the person handling the sale. DiBiase had not been accused of a crime. Of course, Ted Jr. was never an employee of Mississippi's Department of Human Services, but he did work with the agency on his Law of 16 program at one point, which was a self-help leadership training program. Ted Jr. Of course, we already know that Ted DiBiase Jr. was a former two-time tag team champion and was signed to WWE from 2007 to 2013. Stay tuned for updates on this case. So, that is actually kind of interesting about this whole thing with Ted DiBiase. This is kind of interesting for Ted DiBiase Jr. and actually the entirety of the DiBiase family. If you guys have not been familiar with the DiBiase family, Ted DiBiase Sr., the $1 Million Man, was always well known to be a rich snob and actually was playing it perfectly in character as the $1 Million Man. However, he changed his life and changed everything around and became a Christian and even a preacher. Now, as for Ted DiBiase Jr., yeah, he did have the same kind of issue. He did actually have kind of a charisma that could work and actually have a cocky attitude. But after leaving, he actually decided not to get back into the wrestling business and actually ended up being a full-time family man, which is actually quite fitting for him. And he's even trying to be a pastor just like his father. And I don't know, but and then of course you already heard what Brett DiBiase was doing during his time after he got released. So it's no secret that we have the DiBiase family and they have their history of, their demons. But this is a pretty big demon that they have to conquer. And I'm actually honestly feel bad for the DiBiase family. Because the DiBiase family was always honest, but they had never actually dealt with anything like this. And that got me into thinking about another thing for a video that I might be thinking about. Thinking about former wrestlers that actually left the company under very controversial circumstance. Like, for example, Drew McIntyre when he firstly got the shaft and probably later got released. Of course, it wasn't until years later that he got his release in 2014 or whatever, but you get my point. Okay. Ooh, excuse me. Tired monkey here. But anyways, that's what I have here on my lovely video here and on my list. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna call it a night, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this little talk video, and let me know what talk about video do you want me to do next, or what's my next live stream. We've been trying to play this game called Fall Guys. That is pretty fun, but at the same time, oh my lord. But I hope you enjoyed. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one, boys. Deuces.